Welcome back to MFO, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. Yesterday, I think we did a pretty informative video about the fall turnover. And that was a video that was designed to set up today's video, which is what are the 5 best baits to throw in September. So we're going to come back. Now that you know why we're using them, we'll show you and talk to you about what baits to use this month, in the month of September. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Mark Fisher Outdoors, everybody. I am Mark Fisher, and we're going to talk about the 5 baits that I'm going to be throwing a lot in September. As I mentioned yesterday, September is all about junk fishing. One thing that we're paying attention to is the fact that we're really not going to worry about pattern fishing. The fish are spread out. We talked about that yesterday. They can be spread out within the water column. They can be feeding up for the winter in preparation for the winter. And we are going to, and you're going to notice that a lot of these baits are going to be minnow or bait fish resembling types baits, because that's what the fish are going to be kind of focusing on as they start to feed up for winter. So we're going to start, and there's a very specific reason that we're going to start with this. We're going to start with a topwater bait, and my preference at this time of year is going to be, this is a Chapo, a Berkeley Chapo. Whether you use a Chapo or whether you use the Whopper Plopper, doesn't really matter. That's a matter of personal preference. But I want a topwater bait that I'm going to be able to cast far, work it back fast, cover a lot of water, and make a ruckus up on the surface. So a Chapo or a Whopper Plopper is going to meet that need. Now, I'm not saying that I won't throw a buzz bait, but if I'm in a situation where maybe there's eelgrass that's floating up on the surface, this Whopper Plopper type bait is going to get hung a lot on that floating eelgrass. So I'll switch over to a buzz bait. But if I've got clean water, I'm going to use a Whopper Plopper or a Chapo, and I'm going to cover a lot of water. Here's the big thing that I want you to, because again, with all of these, there's got to be a reason why. We talked about how the oxygen level is spread out amongst the entire water column during this time of year after that fall turnover. Well, up on the top, when there's a breeze, there's actually more oxygen up towards the surface because the wind is oxygenating that surface area. So if that breeze is going and that water is moving up on top, or has been, you're actually going to get a little bit more oxygen up to the top. So I'm going to focus on baits that are near the surface if that applies. So this is a great bait that's going to give me a lot of disturbance up on top and work within that high oxygen level, and the fact that they might be feeding on bait fish kinds of things. So this is the bait that I'm going to go to with that. So that's my number 1 bait, and you've got different sizes for that. In fact, tomorrow we're going to be showing you this bait in the pool, so you'll want to see tomorrow's episode. The second bait that I'm going to talk about, and I'm not doing this in too much of an order, but I am going to, like I said, mimicking bait fish, and so I want to throw a spinnerbait. And with the spinnerbait, a chatterbait might do the trick here. I'm not saying I wouldn't throw a chatterbait, but I'm trying to mimic more than one bait fish. And we've talked about this when I did an episode comparing a spinnerbait to a chatterbait. I just think that personally, a spinnerbait is imitating multiple fish, multiple bait fish. So I'm going to throw a spinnerbait intentionally rather than throwing a chatterbait, because I want to mimic those little balls of bait fish, and I think this is an excellent time. Again, you're covering water. You can cover different areas within the water column, and with a spinnerbait, you can get in next to brush piles and laydowns and things like that. So this would be a bait that I'm absolutely going to throw a lot of in September, as well as a spinnerbait. My third bait, again, these are all gonna fit in a very common theme, and that is covering water. I'm gonna be able to cover water with a square bill. And again, if I'm throwing that square bill where I've got a certain depth and I'm able to tick the weeds that are remaining as the weeds are kind of dying off and they're getting lower, and I'm going to be able to run a square bill over the tops of those weeds and things like that, but able to say I'm on a flat with a weed flat and the weed is down 3 or 4 feet, I can make several casts and just kind of cover a lot of water ticking the weeds with a square bill. So my third bait for September would be a square bill crankbait. The fourth bait is a little unique and kind of old school, quite honestly. I used to do this quite a bit, and in the fall, I like to take an old culprit swim-tail worm, just a ribbon tail type worm, and Texas rig it and swim this worm. And because it's swimming, you can cover water. You're not just dragging it along the bottom nice and easy. You can, if you get into a situation where on your graph you're seeing stumps or logs down on the bottom, you can let it go down, you can hop it, you can do that, but it's very versatile. Primarily, I'm gonna take this worm and I'm gonna swim it through the water column or through the weeds. But if I find some bottom and some structure along the bank or along the bottom, I can let it die, I can let it sink down to the bottom, and I can work this bait through various depths of the water column. And this ribbon tail type worm is the one it's going to keep moving, and the tail's going to keep fluttering as long as I'm retrieving that worm back. So a Texas rigged ribbon tail worm is my fourth choice for September. And then finally, when you're talking about covering water and you're talking about imitating bait fish, there's absolutely no reason not to get out the old umbrella rig and be able to cover a lot of water, mimic a big ball of bait fish, and get some big bass throwing the umbrella rig. Those are my 5 baits for September. And guys, I think if you remember what we talked about in yesterday's video and the reasons why, the depleted oxygen level, the fact that fish are spread out, and the fact that you may have all 5 of these rods rigged up on your deck and be throwing different rods, different baits at different times depending on where you are, and just kind of junk fish your way to success in the month of September. Guys, I hope you liked the video. If you have any comments, I'd certainly appreciate you sending those in. Please subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. And we will see you tomorrow for our Underwater Wednesday episode featuring the Chapo and the Whopper Plopper. We're going to talk about what it looks like, what it sounds like, and that's a key component to that. And we'll be putting these in the pool and showing you underwater and above water on the Chapo and the Whopper Plopper tomorrow on Underwater Wednesday. Take care, everybody.